Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where what do I always say? You gotta toot your own horn. And today, Disney is a tootin'. You also have to control the narrative, which, make no mistake, Disney is also doing with the box office press release they put out for Black Widow. I have never seen Disney or any studio do this. But I think as the landscape becomes more competitive, I think you will. Disney, what a trailblazer. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people, I think a lot of studios should be following the footsteps of Disney more than they are. But I'd put out box office press releases. I think it's pretty cool. Although, don't worry, we're going to differentiate between what Disney's reality and the actual box office reality. They're pretty close, but there is a slight discrepancy. And speaking of firsts, I know you guys are all very excited about this, but they actually gave out a number for Disney Premier Access. Finally! 60 million globally, not domestic, that's globally. Disney Plus only deals in global absolutes, largely because they don't want to give a domestic international breakdown, but they accidentally did. Anyway, remember, Disney keeps 100% of the revenue from Disney Premier Access instead of having to give part of it to movie theaters, and even more so overseas, because they have also some, I don't know if Disney has international distribution partners. Sometimes other movies do. But anyway, we also have to remember that when movies open in theaters, domestically and overseas, the percentage split between what goes to the studio and what goes to the movie theater vastly favors all studios, but particularly Disney, because they're extremely aggressive in their negotiations with theaters, as we know. And then the longer the movie plays in theaters, the larger the percentage the theater gets as an incentive to keep it on its screens. But no matter what the percentage split is opening weekend, it ain't 100% for Disney, and they get that on Disney Plus. So the exact breakdown, according to Disney, and they're not going to fudge these numbers. I don't know. I mean, we'll never be able to verify the Disney Plus number, but the domestic and international, those can be checked. I don't think they're fudged, because if it ever got out, it would be horrible. So anyway. And also they'd fudge a bigger number. So 60 million, so anyway, 80 million domestic debut, 78 million international, and 60 million on Disney Plus worldwide. They also said that domestically, with theatrical and Disney Plus combined, Black Widow opened with over 100 million. So that means the domestic portion of the Disney Plus revenue was about 20 million. And sure enough, Disney Plus is trending, on Disney Plus, Black Widow is only trending around 15, which means far more people chose to see the movie in theaters. A fantastic sign for the movie business as they strive to distinguish itself and to compete with streaming. You don't want these to be the same experience. You want them to be different, so that's something the movie business has got going for it. It's the event. I saw Black Widow in a theater on Friday night, and it was much more fun than watching it at home as I did with the screener. I really, really had a good time. Speaking of shady, which is going to come up a couple of times during this episode, actually, what's going on with the Disney Plus trending section, right? I never include it on Movie Math because I can't verify it, and I know it differs from user to user. So you're like, well, hey, at first I thought if it was really sketchy, they would have put Black Widow much higher. But then I was thinking about it, and I was like, there's not in Disney's best interest to have it higher on Disney Plus, because they want you to go to the movie theater to get those box office numbers up. So they might be hiding it in the latter section of trending. Oh, is that sneaky? Because as I've been talking about, I talked about that today on the Black Widow spoiler live stream discussion. With the ad campaigns for Black Widow, the ad campaign has been like, oh, is it on Disney Plus? Crazy, weird. I guess you could watch it there if you wanted to. But then on Jungle Cruise, if you look at the trailers for that, they're like, oh my God, it's on Disney Plus. Did you know that? You could totally watch it at home. I bet you're more likely to watch it now, huh? It's just interesting to see the controlling the narrative again, between the two ad campaigns. So very interesting. What's your theory on how Disney Plus trending section operates? In the press release, they also went on to say, and I love this line, this is just whoever crafted this in the publicity department is a genius. They said, Marvel Studios continues to create excellence across multiple parts of the Disney ecosystem. Oh, what is this, environmentally friendly? Not the Disney empire. That sounds too aggressive. This is a wonderful ecosystem that we're protecting. I love it. The mighty synergy. And they highlighted not only the Disney Plus shows, but noted that overall Marvel fans, since the beginning of Disney Plus, have streamed 3 billion hours of overall Marvel content to date. That's like the movies and everything. That's incredible, though. And of course, they also highlighted the opening of Avengers Campus at Disneyland, which I think is doing pretty well. No one really talks about it that much because the rides are only medium. But, I think interestingly, the character meet and greets are like the coolest thing there, especially because they have new ones almost every week to coincide with what's coming out. I still feel there's a slight chance that Marvel is overextending itself with so many shows. And I'll be curious to see what Black Widow's second weekend looks like. I think that, it used to be that you'd have to wait, for a Marvel experience, and you could only get it in the multiplex, in the theater. But now you have, you live in a Marvel world, which is pretty cool. But I don't know what that's going to mean for being able to get those movies into the $1 billion club, especially the ones that maybe aren't as good as, some of the. I mean, it's interesting. I'll be curious to see how Kevin Feige handles this. So far, he has not failed, but it's an interesting new course for him. But so far, I think one of the reasons he succeeds is because he has incredible fans. Marvel continues to have the most loyal, and I think this is important, ravenous, and I mean this in a good way, fans that I've ever seen. You just can't get enough. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful fandom to be a part of. I mean, forget any other franchise's fans getting fed at this level. I don't think any other franchise's fans could eat at this level. Maybe DC. I think that it's there with DC. And I'm curious to see what it'll look like when the HBO Max DCEU shows get online and they create the same ecosystem. Oh, let's use that term. It's hilarious. But, we've been waiting. We keep saying that, like, when DCEU gets on the level of Marvel in this way, in this way, in this way. And they never get there. It's really infuriating because I think they could compete if they were at all operational. It's ridiculous. All right, so the press release also noted that Black Widow is the highest opening for an origin movie at Marvel after Black Panther and Captain Marvel. But they're cheating because that's the 100 million number, not the one in theaters. And I think that you just can't do that. I mean, they took the Disney Plus route, which is fine. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can't start rolling those numbers into box office. You can't have your cake and eat it too, Disney. I mean, and you have so much cake. It's fine. All right, so let's talk about in reality. So in reality, Black Widow came in at around, what do you know, Doctor Strange and Ant-Man and the Wasp with its opening weekend, which is exactly where I pegged it. And I also suspect, again, that the film will have a large second weekend drop, which is par for the course with blockbusters, but I think this will be a little bit on the big side. But it just has to be better than F9 second weekend drop, which was 67%. So I think Black Widow won't drop that much. I do think it'll maybe have a 6 in front of it though. And it'll be another win, but that'll still be another win for Disney if they just at least are less than the F9 drop. And I still think the Black Widow's box office total will again be on par with Doctor Strange and Ant-Man and the Wasps. So the other shady thing that Disney did in their press release is they were like, yo, this is the biggest opening since The Rise of Skywalker, also our movie. And it's like, that was the last big franchise movie to open before the pandemic. Of course that was the last big opening. Again, Disney, you don't need to twist things like this. You have actual good news to report. The only thing I can think about why Disney was so aggressive and even made a box office press release is that they don't want the trades to harp on the fact that they maybe shouldn't have released a day and date on Disney Plus. When they made that decision, the pandemic was going along a lot worse. And the Delta variant is, of course, it's only really posing a really big problem in parts of the country that aren't vaccinated, which, to be fair, are not huge movie-going sections anyway. So I don't think it's really affecting the box office, although please consider getting vaccinated. And also, I think Disney's also sensitive to the fact that Black Widow failed to hit the $90 million that everybody was expecting. It's only $10 million short. It's a pandemic, whatever. But I think they're a little bit concerned about that. And I just think, again, they wanted to control the narrative. And Disney's digital experiment is about to end anyway. Jungle Cruise is the last movie, and then we're going back to theaters only. And I honestly have to say, I don't think that Disney Plus hurt Black Widow. It opened exactly where I thought it would. I think it helped in parts of the world where theaters are still closed, which is why the Disney Plus revenue is so much bigger overseas, 40 versus 20. And I think it probably domestically got a few people to watch Black Widow opening weekend, maybe who otherwise would not have, who are not people who go to the theater, but prefer to watch movies at home, and now had the option. It got Yelena trending #1 on Friday night. That was super cool to see. Couldn't have happened to a cooler character. I'm so excited for her. Her future in the MCU is bright. But I also felt, though, that the plethora of online perfect quality screen grabs and footage from GIFs to actual scenes was unsettling. And while digital releases were a lot of fun during the pandemic, and I too felt maybe they should last forever, now that we're coming out of it, and I think that we are coming out of it, just wear your mask during the movie. It sucks, but it's a simple fix, and you can still go and have a good time. That's what I've been doing. And I think it's time for digital day-and-date releases to end. And I still feel bad for Warner Brothers that they committed to the entire year, because they did not need to do that. So press release aside, let's really dig into the reality of what happened this weekend at the box office. So press release is great, but we want an honest take, and I'm about to give it to you. Don't worry, it's still positive. All right, so anyway, I think everyone realizes that Black Widow is not the MCU at its best. It's not. That doesn't mean it's a bad movie or you couldn't have enjoyed it, but it's not the best the MCU can offer. And, I think the MCU, took a little bit of a rest on this one. But it illustrates the strength of the MCU machine and the strength of the fandom. Black Widow was one of the MCU's is one of the MCU's lowest Rotten Tomato scored movies ever. Currently at 80%. It dipped into the 70s a little bit, and I think it probably will end up maybe around 79 or 78 once a couple more reviews trickle in. And it has a rare A- cinema score. MCU movies usually get an A, and Thor, the first Thor, not Thor the Dark World, is the lowest with a B+. But an A- is nothing to cry about. I mean, it's lower for the MCU. I think it should be a signal to Kevin Feige that he kind of dropped the ball a little bit with this movie, but I don't think he's got to feel really bad about it or anything. It's more like notes for next time. And most important, I think this is the most important, in my opinion, is that this is the most successful female-led, female-directed actioner to hit theaters since Wonder Woman in 2017 and Captain Marvel in 2019, which was co-directed, but one of the directors was a woman. This genre has had really bad luck as of late, and I think this was a huge win for this kind of movie to make sure that Hollywood keeps making it. So I'm very happy about that. Wait till you get to the audience breakdown. It's fantastic. But first I want to say that while Scarlett Johansson continues to flirt with cancellation, I don't know why she decided to say great stuff about Joss Whedon on an Entertainment Weekly interview in the past few days. I mean, as everyone pointed out, the faces of everyone else during that interview when she said that is quite telling. I don't know how she could be so obtuse about this stuff. But anyway, I mean, she's been in Hollywood for so long. How is her media training so poor? So anyway, this still makes her one of the few actresses to ever open a blockbuster film. Although Yelena Belova is such a big part of the movie, and I'm curious as to, I think that Scarlett Johansson will return someday, because it's just too tempting not to have her come back at least a little bit. I do think that I don't know how bad everyone's going to feel to transition onto I think, and to that degree, Marvel's passing the mantle quite successfully. They've done a great job passing the Captain America mantle, now the Black Widow mantle, and I think they're going to do a great job passing the Black Panther mantle. And it's, because other franchises, when they recast, they reboot the story too, but Marvel can't do that because the strength is that it's a continuing story. So I'm really impressed with their ability to pass the mantle on to new, not only because it's not new actors, because it's to new characters, and that's really cool. That's incredible, and they're doing a great job. So also, though, Scarlett Johansson, though, is not going to leave Disney forever, because while Marvel stars have been unable to date to translate their success into something outside of the MCU, Disney's going to try and do it themselves. So Chris Evans is, of course, doing the voice in the upcoming Lightyear movie for Pixar, and Scarlett Johansson, it looks like, hasn't been confirmed, but she's likely going to star in a Tower of Terror movie that she's also producing. It'll be a big deal if Disney can make this work, although it will make the studios even more powerful when it comes to talent deals echoing the original studio system, which eventually became very abusive. So, you prefer the free agentness that actors have these days. But it'll be interesting. It'll be incredible if these things work out. And speaking of talent deals and studio power, Feige revealed that Marvel is no longer going to sign talent for massive picture deals, like 9, 10, 11 pictures. They used to do that because it would keep talent from negotiating for bigger paydays as the movies succeeded. So they didn't want to do that, wanted to lock them in. I'm sure they had some pay increases built in, but not to the level that an agent would demand when these movies were hugely successful. But now the MCU is so powerful, I don't think anyone's going to aggressively negotiate with Feige, especially because he now has such a deep roster to pull from if any actor decides to get uppity. Or, praise Joss Whedon. What was she thinking? As for Black Widow's audience breakdown, this is exciting. It was 58% male and mostly men under 25. And for a female-led film, a mostly female-led film, it's almost entirely women. That's fantastic. And just goes to show that, men are open to these movies. Hollywood and some people have been trying to say that they're not, and they clearly are. The proof is in the pudding. 46% Caucasian, 21% Latino, only 16% Black. That's low. That's really low. And again, this is a note for Feige. It shows a missed opportunity here, and another reason why the box office is probably a little bit lower than they're used to. He failed to capture the interest of that market, and that's problematic. It's something for him to consider. He just, I'm curious. If you're a member of that community, why do you think perhaps the turnout wasn't as great as it usually is? Usually, Black moviegoers are in second place. So they're very far behind here. And then 18% Asian other. Now, I know some of you have already seen Black Widow multiple times in theaters in its opening weekend. So how many theater showings do you think you have left in you? Or will you maybe switch to Disney Plus? And of course, don't forget that the Loki finale is this Wednesday to further scratch your Marvel itch. But maybe you'll be jonesing for more Marvel come Friday next week. Black Widow's box office story is far from over, but it's obviously off to an absolutely fantastic, or should I say marvelous, start. And it proves that not just the MCU, but the movie business has survived the pandemic. So, hurrah! Huzzah! As they say on The Great. What a great show. All right, so as for the rest of the top 10, F9 took another huge drop. Par for the course with blockbusters, but these drops are a bit more than usual for a blockbuster. And it still hasn't caught up, though, to A Quiet Place 2 domestically. But overseas, A Quiet Place 2 is choky on F9's exhaust. And even though Black Widow was, again, super saturated, just like F9, playing like every half hour at most multiplexes, there was still enough room at the marketplace for Uni's other movies. I guess largely because it was counter-programmed with these two, Boss Baby 2 and The Forever Purge. And in fact, Boss Baby 2 actually fell less in its second weekend than The Croods 2, and that was with almost no competition and smack in the middle of the pandemic. So that's great for Boss Baby 2. Now let's head over to streaming. Now speaking of Loki, because Nielsen, of course, is a couple of weeks behind, Loki's finally on the board here the week of June 7th. It debuted at number 3, but look at the minutes. It's very close to Sweet Tooth and Lucifer, and those have multiple episodes versus Loki's single debut episode. So I'm excited to see as the weeks and the episodes rack up for Loki, if it indeed dominates. This is very exciting. And over on movies, in its second week on Disney Plus at no extra cost, Raya is still number 1. Oh boy! While Moana and Cruella are also in the top 10. I was talking about Lin-Manuel Miranda with Encanto, and I said that he's struggled outside of Hamilton. And Moana was not a big hit when it opened, but you guys are right. It's had amazing legs. It's getting a Disney Plus series. I think that Moana certainly is a very nice feather in Lin-Manuel Miranda's cap. And speaking of animation, China's Wish Dragon did very well on Netflix, and apparently no one cared that it was a complete ripoff of Disney's Aladdin. Like really, if you look at that trailer, it's the exact same story. It's shocking. And also look at that, Mitchells vs. the Machines and Army of the Dead are still in there. That's very impressive. And no wonder Zack Snyder got his Rebel Moon follow-up movie at Netflix. Very exciting stuff there. There's some cool stuff coming with that movie that they haven't announced yet. As for Netflix this week, sure enough, Virgin River Season 3 is number 1. When I was talking about what was coming out the coming week last week, I was like, people sure love Virgin River. And boy, do they love Virgin River. That's incredible. It just goes to show you what a big audience is. There's such a diverse audience out there and huge pockets that you can tap into. Manifest, still up there, even though no one has saved that show. Again, the creators must be like, what do we have to do? And the final season of Atypical also is doing very well. While Fear Street does have both of its entries in the top 10, both of its entries so far in its trilogy, but it's really suffering from lack of advertising. Atypical, talk about typical, a typical Netflix problem. They really do not, for the most part, advertise. But although Netflix does a lot of great stuff, like look at the Russian movie Major Grom, Plague Doctor. That's at number 6. What Netflix is doing with expanding the audience for foreign films is incredible. What a service to the good of entertainment overall. I think that's fabulous. Although we're going to talk about a foreign film over on iTunes too. I love how the world is becoming more global. Finally, it used to be that America only exported entertainment, but now we're starting to really import a lot of entertainment, and I think that's wonderful. And there's Resident Evil, the animated series, at number 9, which I think would have been much higher if it had been, good. Then over on iTunes, Nobody is still number 1. Come on, Uni, how fast can you make that sequel? I want my family trip to Italy that they tease in the first film. That's going to be so great. How long did it take you to discover Nobody? I'm curious, because, it's been playing for a really long time. It's fantastic. Then Werewolves Within Until Death. Werewolves Within had a brief theatrical release, but they're basically straight to PVOD movies. But they're still doing great in their second weekends. And then, as I told you, speaking of foreign films, South Korea's The Swordsman is doing fantastic, featuring none other than our new Sub-Zero, Joe Taslim. It took forever, but seeing the Raid's Joe Taslim finally build a global career, and his Raid co-star Iko Uwais in the upcoming Snake Eyes movie is just so wonderful. I'm so glad that Hollywood did not make their American version of the Raid like they were planning to. Now, as for what's coming out this week, where did the Space Jam 2 enthusiasm go? Remember how excited everyone was for this movie? Now it seems nobody cares. I'm curious. Are you going to see Space Jam 2 this weekend? And if you are planning to see it, where are you going to watch it? Are you going to watch it in theaters, or are you going to stream it on HBO Max? Again, that HBO Max deal just did, Warner Brothers, streaming all their movies for the year just has not worked out for them. They don't have the subscribers to show for it. Now, as for what's streaming this coming week, another tsunami. The White Lotus starts tonight on HBO and HBO Max. Will be another Mayor of Easttown. It looks pretty good. I'm going to check it out. Netflix debuts Gunpowder Milkshake on Wednesday, because they have another movie on Friday, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But I watched Gunpowder Milkshake actually last night. The embargo lifts on Tuesday. Thursday, American Horror Stories, an anthology series, drops its first 2 episodes on Hulu, while Dr. Death drops its entire season on Peacock. This show stars Joshua Jackson, Jamie Dornan, Christian Slater, Alec Baldwin. Why has it not been advertised? I'm so excited. Then also Never Have I Ever Season 2 drops on Netflix. And on Friday, Schmigadoon debuts on Apple TV, the week before Ted Lasso. So I think a lot of people are going to get Apple TV to watch Ted Lasso, so Schmigadoon could really benefit from that. And Netflix has the final entry on Friday in its Fear Street trilogy, 1666, as well as the Naomi Osaka documentary. And she's been in the press a lot for, I think a lot of, protecting her mental health, and I think the very controversial and brave decisions that she's made, which could really change the tennis and just sports overall. So I think that there will be a lot of heat on that documentary. So that's this week's movie math. What do you think of Black Widow's opening weekend? What do you think the second weekend will look like? And also, are you ready for day and date digital releases to end? I'm also curious what you think of Disney's press release. And also, what are you planning to watch this coming week? And it might be more Black Widow. I'm very curious. Share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.